Arnold Schwarzenegger once described the affair that ended his marriage as the greatest failure of his life. But the detail that changes the entire story is this. His wife, Maria Shriver, gave birth to their son Christopher on September 27, 1997. And just 5 days later, on October 2nd, the family's longtime housekeeper gave birth to another son. Arnold's son, same father, same household, same week. And once you know that, every smiling family photograph starts to read differently, because for 14 years, Maria Shriver lived inside a marriage where the evidence of her husband's betrayal walked through her own kitchen every morning. The two boys grew up together. They attended the same birthday parties, shared holidays, appeared in the same family orbit. And Maria had absolutely no idea that the child she saw at her home for years was also her husband's son. That is not the kind of lie someone improvises, that is infrastructure. And what Arnold eventually admitted makes you go back and look at every public speech, every campaign appearance, every interview where Maria defended him, and wonder exactly how long the gap existed between what was being said and what was actually true. To understand why this story still unsettles people more than a decade later, you have to understand who Maria Shriver was before she ever became Arnold Schwarzenegger's wife. Because she was never simply the wife, she was American political royalty, the niece of President John F. Kennedy, the daughter of Eunice Kennedy Shriver, the founder of the Special Olympics. She grew up inside one of the most scrutinized families in modern American history, and despite that pressure, she built an entirely separate identity for herself. By the late 1980s, Maria had become a respected NBC journalist, covering wars, political crises, and the AIDS epidemic. She anchored national broadcasts. Executives reportedly viewed her as one of the future faces of the network. She built credibility in an industry that does not hand credibility to anyone carrying a famous last name. Arnold came from an entirely different universe. He was the Austrian immigrant who transformed himself from bodybuilder to movie star. Through sheer force of will, they met in 1977 at a charity tennis event hosted by Maria's mother. He was loud, ambitious, physically enormous, and already obsessed with becoming bigger than bodybuilding. She was disciplined, politically connected, and deeply resistant to the Kennedy mythology surrounding her family. They should not have worked, which is precisely why they did. They married on April 26, 1986 in Hyannisport, Massachusetts. The guest list looked less like a wedding and more like an American Power Index. Oprah Winfrey, Andy Warhol, Diane Sawyer, members of the Kennedy dynasty. Grace Jones reportedly performed at the reception. The marriage joined Hollywood celebrity and political aristocracy into a single public image, and over the next decade, Maria kept giving things up quietly. That part matters. She had 4 children. Catherine in 1989, Christina in 1991, Patrick in 1993, Christopher in 1997. As Arnold's political ambitions grew, Maria scaled back her journalism career. When Arnold ran for governor of California in 2003, she effectively stepped away from NBC altogether because the conflict of interest became impossible to navigate. She became California's first lady. Instead, and if you have ever watched one person slowly reorganize their entire identity around supporting someone else's dream, you understand how invisible those sacrifices become over time. Nobody applauds the things you stop pursuing. Nobody tracks the opportunities quietly abandoned, but the paper trail always remembers, and the first crack in this marriage appeared long before the secret child. In 1985, 1 year before their wedding, Arnold filmed Red Sonja in Italy with actress Brigitte Nielsen. During filming, they began an affair. Not a brief mistake, an actual relationship that lasted through production. Years later, Nielsen confirmed it publicly during an interview with peers. Morgan said she had not realized Arnold was engaged. Maria learned about the affair before the wedding, and she married him. Anyway, that detail changes the entire emotional architecture of what happened later. Because the first betrayal had already been forgiven. Arnold already knew the boundaries could move. He already knew reconciliation was possible. That sequence is deliberate. And then came Mildred Biner. Mildred worked for the family for nearly 2 decades as a housekeeper. She helped raise the children. She attended family events. She was trusted completely inside the household. Sometime in late 1996, Arnold began a sexual relationship with her while Maria was pregnant with Christopher. The overlap matters. The overlap is the part people cannot stop thinking about. Because while Maria carried Arnold's child publicly, another woman inside the same home carried his child privately. 5 days apart, 2 sons entering the world almost simultaneously, one acknowledged immediately. One hidden for 14 years, and Arnold did not confess. He constructed a parallel system instead. According to multiple reports, he quietly provided financial support to Mildred and Joseph for years. He reportedly paid for Joseph's education. He allegedly established financial arrangements and trusts connected to the child. In 2010, less than a year before the scandal became public, Arnold reportedly purchased a 4-bedroom house for Mildred in Bakersfield for approximately $268,000 in cash. That word matters because cash leaves fewer conversations behind. Fewer records visible to the people who are not supposed to know. Cash, that repetition, is not accidental. It reflects decisions made by someone who had years to think through concealment. And during all of this, Maria defended him publicly over and over again. In 2003, while Arnold campaigned for governor of California, 16 women accused him of inappropriate touching and sexual misconduct spanning decades. The Los Angeles Times published the allegations just days before the election. Maria stood beside him anyway. She gave interviews defending his character. She urged voters to trust her judgment. She put her own credibility on the line for him. And Joseph was already 6 years old, living inside the same household. Orbit, which in retrospect reads differently because the public thought Maria was defending her husband against accusations from strangers. But privately, she was defending a man who was already hiding a second child in plain sight, and eventually, the lie became physically impossible to ignore. As Joseph grew older, the resemblance reportedly became overwhelming. Same jawline, same facial structure, same body type. Friends later described moments where Maria would watch Joseph at family gatherings and then look toward Arnold with what they called visible discomfort. Your body often recognizes betrayal before your mind allows itself to say the words out loud. If you have ever experienced carefully managed deception from someone you trusted completely, you know exactly what that feeling is. The tiny pauses, the moments that do not fit together, the strange emotional static that enters ordinary interactions. Glance held too long, a familiarity that exceeds explanation. The second cup of coffee already prepared before someone asks for it, and the terrifying part is not noticing those details. The terrifying part is realizing you noticed them years ago and forced yourself not to follow the thought all the way to its conclusion. Maria finally confronted Arnold directly during marriage counseling in early 2011, shortly after he left office as governor. She asked him whether Joseph was his son. He admitted it, not publicly, privately first, and Arnold later wrote in his memoir, Total Recall, that confessing felt like dropping a massive stone he had been carrying for years. But the truth is the stone had already fallen. Maria simply had not heard it hit the floor yet. On May 17, 2011, the Los Angeles Times published the story publicly. Within hours it became international news. Arnold Schwarzenegger had fathered a child with the family housekeeper. The headlines moved instantly. The late-night monologue started immediately. The scandal consumed every entertainment and political news cycle in America. But the most devastating part happened inside the family itself. Christopher Schwarzenegger was a teenager when he learned that the boy he had known almost his entire life was actually his half-brother. Not months later, not privately through family discussions first. The same week the entire world found out. Imagine what happens psychologically to 25 years of memories after that revelation. Not only the bad memories, the good ones, every vacation photograph, every Christmas morning, every birthday party where Joseph appeared somewhere in the background, every dinner where Mildred served food to a family built around a secret she shared with the husband but not the wife. Maria later described the aftermath in deeply personal terms. In her 2025 book, I Am Maria, she wrote about terror, grief, physical collapse, sleeplessness, weight loss, the feeling that betrayal had moved beyond emotion and into the body itself. And people who have lived through catastrophic betrayal understand this immediately. It stops being intellectual. It becomes physical. Your nervous system keeps score even when your public face remains composed.